The complete injury prevention guide every runner needs. 9 years as a doctor of physical therapy, working with hundreds of runners. This is what I found. The exact patterns that cause 90% of running injuries and the simple system I teach to help runners stay pain free based on 9 years as a physical therapist. Again, working with hundreds of runners. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I did it and how you can run stronger, stay injury free, and break the pain cycle without guessing, Googling symptoms, looking at random YouTube videos, or taking unnecessary time. Most runners think injuries are random. These same patterns keep showing up. Runners jumping from couch to marathon, miles intensity rising together, right? Runners who make big jumps going to like 40 miles a week, or doing too many speed or hill workouts in a week, exceeding 10% of your longest run in the past 30 days, right? Going from like, a 6 mile long run to then all of a sudden jumping to a 12-mile long run in a 30-day period. Ignoring early warning signs of pain or stiffness in your body. Popular is the fall marathons, right? In New York, Chicago, Philly. I see the same 5 injuries: patellofemoral pain, IT band syndrome, shin splints, Achilles tendinopathy, plantar fasciitis, right? All these types of injuries, they don't just happen by random occurrence. That are often overuse injuries that happen when beginner runners or intermediate runners just start ramping up their running volume, either doing the too much too soon, and particularly back to this rule of exceeding 10% of your longest run in the past 30 days. So 42% of injuries hit the knee. So most of the injuries I see often revolve around the knee joint, right? The runner's knee, the IT band syndrome, or even people who get like bone stress injuries in their knee. Because every step loads about 2 to 3 times your body weight onto your joints. So if you're a 150-pound runner, that's 300 to 450 pounds of force going through your body. So if runners cut the early patterns before they really worsened, most injuries would never happen. You could actually avoid most injuries. I'm not saying you could avoid every injury, but at least the majority of these overuse injuries are there due to training mistakes can be avoided. And if you want a copy of this Google Doc and to learn more about building an injury-proof running plan, I'm sharing inside my free community. So link in the description to join. So step one, understand the pattern, right? Pain that doesn't warm up is potentially some kind of stress injury, whether it's your bone or soft tissue, maybe. So make sure, hey, if you're doing a warm up and that pain doesn't go away, or while you're warm up, like, hey, okay, maybe you need to take it easy going into the run workout, or maybe considering not running at all that workout, especially if the pain's going above a 3 out of 10. We use a 0 to 10 pain scale. So if the pain's above a 3 out of 10 pain, consider, hey, maybe you want to take it easy, switch to a walk, or sometimes you do a run walk. And if the pain's around a 3 or less, it's okay. But if the pain is jumping above a 3, even during your warm up, considering just swapping out the run for a bike, right? Going for a bike ride, biking is low impact. If you notice that you get hamstring or stiffness or tightness in your hamstring, your quads, your glutes, your calves, that's another indicator that, hey, if this is happening after every speed day or every hill workout, that either you need to modify that workout, decrease the intensity by a certain percentage, maybe drop it down to 50% if you need to, like do less reps or sets, or decrease the speed a bit. Or maybe work more on other just easy runs versus having, so maybe you're doing 2 hard workouts a week, like maybe doing a tempo run and a speed workout. Maybe you just cut it down to just a 1 tempo run and an easy day, and then the long run day, for example. Knee stiffness, right? We just kind of cover that. Hip tension or as well. So if you notice also issues at the hip, that's potential patterns that you need to recognize. Don't ignore it, right? Because if you recognize it early, it could definitely beat it from becoming a bigger injury, and it will help you not having to take time off because it becomes a full bone injury, right? You're able to address these minor incidents as they start occurring before they, really accumulate. Screen for stress fracture warning signs, right? So if you have a dull ache that worsens mid-run, you have bone tenderness, or either at the shin or at your foot, because you could get stress fractures in your toes, in your midfoot. Commonly it's in the shin, but you can get them in different bones of your body. Some people even get them in the knee or even up at the hip. But if you notice that there's bone tenderness, you could literally use your hand and touch it. There's sometimes muscle tightness around the painful area because it's trying to protect it, and a pain that doesn't improve with your warm up, or if you were to jump, you do a simple jumping test, just a jumping place, where you jump and then you feel the pain on the landing, right on that leg. There's okay, this might be a stress fracture, especially if it hasn't gone away in like 10 days or so. Like you started developing this soreness or this dull ache or pain in your bone that really hasn't cleared up in just 10 days. Go to get that checked out. Go to a doctor. Simply an X-ray can help. Obviously, work with a medical professional to try to just diagnose yourself. right? Imaging matters only when the symptoms suggest bone involvement, right? If you're thinking, oh, it's just a muscle strain, most muscle strains heal within a week or so, right? You don't have to worry about like a muscle strain. Now, if it's a torn muscle, yes, obviously you go to a doctor as well if that thing's persisting for more than 10 or 14 days. Support bone health. Look deeper. If someone keeps getting recurring bone injuries, like bone stress injuries or stress fractures, check out your vitamin D levels. Get blood work done. Maybe work with a sports dietitian. See if you have like a REDS or low energy availability, which essentially means just not eating enough, right? Your caloric needs based on your training duration, right? If you're training 1.5 hours a day, you're going to need like 19 to 20 calories per pound of body weight. And if you're doing even more intense training, like you're training 3 hours a day, you need even more calories. Like we're talking about like 30 calories per pound of body weight or more. If you're a female athlete, a woman, a runner or athlete, if you lost of your menstrual cycle, right, you no longer have your monthly periods, also get that checked out, work with your doctor, because that could also be indicator you're not eating enough or some other hormonal issues. That could be also putting you at risk for bone stress injuries. And then also having low bone density, people who are at risk of osteoporosis is like a big red flag. If you have osteoporosis, you definitely want to be careful with high impact activity because that's going to put you at risk for fracture. But even osteopenia, which is like the pre-osteoporosis, so you want to make sure you get your bone density, improve your bone density, especially if you have low bone density. So how do you strengthen your bones? It's actually strength training, heavy lifting. So you do heavy lifting in the 8 to 12 rep range, which will help improve the strength of the muscles and the tendons. And then 4 to 6 reps, really heavy for bone density, right? Sometimes people are afraid of doing heavy lifting, but especially if you have low bone density, it's going to be heavy relative to your weight, right? So if you're like a 100-pound athlete, you're not going to be necessarily squatting 500 pounds. Is going to be relative to you. If you're like a 100-pound, woman athlete, woman runner, a female runner, you may be squatting like just your body weight, which is 100 pounds, and then you're slowly trying to improve that to 1.5 times your body weight, right? Don't think it's going to be these giant numbers that you see in elite powerlifters. It's going to be typically relative to your body weight and your experience level, and it's just heavy relative to what your abilities are. Anyhow, you'll do the strength training 2 times per week at minimum. Identify overtraining before it blows up. So watch for lingering soreness, fatigue, drop in performance, increase in your morning heart rate, your resting heart rate, your pulse. If you don't already check this, it's very easy. You take your radial artery, this is the artery along your thumb, or you could take your carotid artery in your neck, measure your pulse, count for like a minute, write it down. You do want to do this on a consistent basis. You can see a trend. You need at least like 2 weeks of data to start getting a trend. Alternatively, if you don't want to do it by hand, you get a little wearable, got my little Oura ring, or you get a Garmin watch, Apple Watch. Just wear. The thing is, you have to sleep with it. You have to wear it, so it's tracking your heart rate when you wake up in the morning. There's also the Whoop strap as well. Just find a system that works for you, so you could use pulse, because a resting morning heart rate could be a good indicator of your training status. And also, if you're feeling just burnt out, fatigue, like you don't even want to train anymore, like psychologically, like, hey, maybe you're getting at risk for overtraining, or you're getting sick all the time. See, these triggers include stacking too much volume, too much intensity, missing runs, and then to try to make up for it, or going too hard on cross training while injured. Like, oh, I'm going to do this boot camp cycling class. I'm going to do this CrossFit class. You're taking all these different high intensity workouts, and then you're just adding way too much training volume or stress to your body week by week that your body can't recover from. Step 5, you want to use strength training as your injury shield. Prioritize, the posterior chain, low back, glutes, hamstring, calves. Know that calves make up about 50% of the force to keep you upright doing running. A lot of people neglect the calves or the lower leg, but the calves are extremely important, right? Training those calf muscles. Also want to train your hip abductors to help keep your pelvis stable, so it's not having a pelvis drop, which contributes to knee issues or knee injuries. So strengthen your glute med, your glute minimus muscle. That's also very important. And running can also be thought of as a series of single leg hops. So train single leg movements, single leg squats, single leg Romanian deadlifts, split squats, single leg hip thrusters, and then single leg jumps or single leg hopping progressions. So weekly structure, I coach for strength training. Once a week, and do a heavy lower body day, right? This could be a kind of main lifts like squats or deadlift, 4 to 6 rep max, and then add in some weak link accessory work for your legs, right? So you're going to target like, hey, glute, hip abductors, maybe hip extensors, maybe your calves, maybe additional single leg work. So you add that with the heavy day. And then also a dynamic day. This is like the speed or plyometrics. So speed strength, like doing speed box squats, right? Maybe you use a weight that's 50% of your 1 rep max. You're doing it maybe 2 sets of 12, or you're getting about 24 reps, 25 reps or so. Jumping, or jumping onto a box jumps, or even depth jumps, jumping off a box to help improve your explosive or speed strength. So these kind of styles of training both train your maximal strength and your speed strength and explosive strength, which makes you a well-rounded runner and also helps you stay strong by addressing the weak links. Also helps you stay injury free. A lot of times runners, either they don't strength train or they do the wrong type of strength training. So they'll haphazardly do strength training on machines and isolation. Maybe they train like a bodybuilder, but training like a bodybuilder is not going to make you an athletic runner and is not going to necessarily decrease your risk of injury. Oftentimes it just develops like quad dominant or, same direction of muscle groups because you're not training different directions. You want to train different directions, right? Not just forward and back, but, side to side rotational. So let's talk about the hip. All right, or you could train the hip rate, hip flexion, hip extension, but then you also train hip abduction, hip adduction, and then hip external rotation, hip internal rotation. So you can see just with that one area alone with the hip, you could train the hip in all these different directions. And a lot of times people neglect the different directions of training, and then they have like an incomplete strength training plan, or they don't strength train at all. So make sure you're training the weak links and training in different directions as well. Warm up, cool down, protect yourself. So dynamic warm up. You should warm up both for running and strength training, but the warm up could be just a dynamic warm up, right? Leg swings, high knees, muscle activation work. Maybe you warm up like your weak areas, like your glutes. Let's say if they're a weak area for you, or your hamstrings or your calves. Warm tissue equals lower injury risk. So if your muscles are cold and you have a sudden change in speed, that increases your risk of injury. Smart shoes and smart progression. So shoe comfort is more important than foot type. People think, oh, I have to get the shoe at the shoe store that the shoe store is recommending based on my foot type. Don't. That's not necessarily true. It's more important that the shoe is comfortable for you. I'm actually personally flat-footed, yet I'm comfortable running in neutral shoes, comfortable running in stability shoes, and even comfortable running in minimalist style barefoot shoes. However, before you change your footwear, like don't rush to the store and make a sudden change. If you have a shoe that works for you and it's comfortable for you, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? If you have a shoe that works for you, don't rush to the store to change because you rode the lettuce trend and you need a big cushion shoe or you need a minimalist shoe. Again, it just matters that it's comfortable for you. People run in all sorts of shoes. You just find what's comfortable for you. Replace your shoes every 100 miles. And carbon plated shoes aren't necessarily the problem. They can be, again, if you jump to it without properly training your feet to get used to the carbon plate. There's a training adaptation period. It's the training errors and the mistakes that make when you're using the carbon plated shoes, right? So make sure if you're going to introduce carbon plate, I mean the race shoes. So if you want to introduce these super shoes, these race shoes, introduce them gradually, maybe 10% of your run workouts, start introducing the race shoes so your body gets used to them. And as your body gets more used to them, start incorporating them as part of your long run, especially if you're going to use them for, let's say, maybe you're a marathon runner or a half marathoner. You want to use the carbon plate shoes as part of some of your long training runs. So now your body's used to using the carbon plate shoes. So when it comes race day, it's not a complete shock to your system when you just jump to the carbon plated race shoe. Use cross training and deloads, especially for beginners or injury prone runners. If you're injury prone, I recommend just dropping down to 2 or 3 runs a week for newer runners and injury prone runners. You don't have to run 5 or 6 days a week. Yes, if you're trying to maximize running performance, 5 or 6 days a week is going to be more realistic. But if you're injury prone or a beginner, you can still train for a marathon on just 3 runs a week with 2 days a week of cross training. Cross training could be bike, row, rucking, elliptical, swimming. Right. I put 30 to 45 minutes, but if you need be, you can even do cross training for 60 minutes and 90 minutes. It depends on your goals and what you're training for. Obviously the marathoner is going to need more cross training volume than the half marathoner or a 10K runner. And every 3 to 4 weeks, you're going to deload about 20 or 40% volume intensity, going to decrease it, right? So either decrease that miles per week, the volume or the intensity of how fast you're going. Some people even choose to take a complete week off of running just to give their legs a break and just do cycling that week as just, 5 days of cross training on that deload week. It's going to vary on the runner and the individual athlete. So it's just good to, journal, document how your body responds and what you feel your body needs in terms of recovery. If your pace drops, heart rate rises, or niggles pop up, deload sooner. Follow the 20% intensity rule. So no more than 20% of your weekly running at hard effort, right? You get faster by running slow more often. So this is especially true for people who run like 5 or 6 days a week. This is essentially polarized training. This is where You probably also heard of this thing called the 80-20 rule. This is essentially where that comes from. 80% of the runs are easy, 20% are hard, right? So hard could be, the speed workouts, the tempo run, while the rest of the training week would be your easy runs. Again, but this is really more for people who train 5 or 6 days a week. You're training just 3 days a week. You could follow more of a pyramidal approach where you have one easy day, one, tempo run or a speed workout, long run workout. This polarizes a pyramidal. Anyhow, runners who follow this framework cut their injury rates dramatically, feel stronger week to week, build bone density and tendon capacity, run longer with fewer setbacks, break the cycles of chronic knee, hip, or shin pain, and stop guessing and start progressing with confidence. They stop surviving the training and start thriving in it. I currently have just limited spots to work with me one-on-one to get pain-free my private coaching. And you get more resilient using the system I developed, the Athletic Runner Method. If you're curious, there's a link to apply in the description. First come, first serve. So injuries follow patterns. Fix the pattern, prevent the injury. Strength plus smart load management beats rest and hope. Consistency is better than hero workouts. Runners who listen early rarely break down. Running smart is running long and running for the long term, whether you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, 60s, and beyond.